Norway may be small, cold, or even empty, but it is an amazing country. The country is well known, and many people want their own countries to be more like it. Why is that? It's because Norway is one of the richest countries in the world, second richest per capita if you don't count the micronations, and regularly ranks high on many measures of how happy people are. It ranks 6th in terms of happiness, 7th in terms of life satisfaction, and 1st in terms of the Human Development Index. It looks like the Norwegians have some of the best lives in the world. How did Norway get to be so rich and happy? Let's find out in this video. Norway has grown in a way that no other country could because of its unique situation on Earth. There are 3 places that make up Norway's geography. These places have made the country rich and kept it happy. Of course, Norway's small size is due to its geography. It is on the very edge of Europe, on top of the Scandinavian peninsula. Its landscape has made for some great vacation spots, but it's not the best place to try stay alive. This is a problem that can be seen on the topographical map of Norway and Scandinavia in general. Norway has a lot of mountains. The Scandinavian mountains run through almost the whole country and form the border between Norway and Sweden. The fjords that run along Norway's tadpole-shaped country, make it hard to get to the water without falling 1,000 meters. Because of its mountains and the fact that it's hard to trade along the coast, Norway is a hard country to grow, and for the most part, a poor country with few people. There is some hope in the south though. Because it is flat, it was able to build ports in Oslo, its biggest city, where most people lived and still live today. The rest of the population, on the other hand, was still spread out, mostly in shore places that could be reached. The mountains and lakes in Norway make it very hard for Sweden, which was right next door, to take over. A few times they were successful, but most of the time, Norway was safe. Its weather also didn't bring a lot of people there. Norway is mostly made up of snow and subarctic land, and the coast has marine weather. It's cold in the subarctic, and plants die in cold places. You can't work in cold places, which limits how many people Norway could reach. The result is that Norway only has about 5 million people living there now, and it's easy for everyone to get rich when there's a lot of money and not many people. Norway's population, on the other hand, grows slowly every year, and its population pyramid is stable. In 20 years, Norway will have 6.2 million people, and by the year 2100, they should have about 7.9 million, which is still a lot more than what I would call a big population. Please don't get me wrong, Norway has been stuck in a weak third world status for most of its history because of its environment, which limits population growth. But Norway is one of the richest countries in the world now, and its small but slowly growing population helps it stay that way. Second, they're neighbors to Norway. Scandinavian countries have been feuding and fighting with each other for most of history, but in the last 50 to 100 years, they've been some of the most peaceful countries in the world. Let's take a look at its late past. Norse values were quickly replaced by Christian values, and pillaging stopped being cool. This was very true, even though the Viking Age made Norway powerful and full of people who liked to steal. In the 1300s, Norway had its most prosperous years, with plenty of land, peace, and lots of trade with other countries. But then the Black Death came along and ruined everything. There was a union with Sweden and Denmark, a famine, another union with Sweden, a vote for freedom that was successful, and then World War I, which is the start of modern Norway's history. During World War I, Norway was neutral, but it strongly supported the Allies. Like the rest of Europe, they were hurt by the Great Depression and had a bad economy. Even though Norway didn't side with either side in World War II, Germany attacked them to get to their materials. They gave up quickly. But there is a fighting force that is pretty big for their size. Europe was at peace after World War II, but it took a while to rebuild after half of the continent had been destroyed. America, which is having a great economic time right now, would give most of Europe the money they needed to rebuild under the Marshall Plan. Norway was part of this. France and Germany learnt from the worst war ever that it was not fun to fight, and they would do anything to avoid another one. As part of this, NATO was created, which is a defense partnership between most of Europe led by the US. Norge joined both NATO and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, in 1949, the terrible events of World War II also led to the formation of the European Union. Norway never joined the EU, but they do have a free trade agreement with other countries that are not in the EU. Without a doubt, the EU has brought Europe closer together and made a war on the whole continent much less possible than it ever was. That is even more true now that NATO is in place, and Norway is so far away from any major wars that it probably wouldn't have to get involved. Sweden and Finland, which are close by, are not in NATO, but in the EU. On paper, the neighbours aren't in the same union, but the Scandinavian states are so well connected that war is very unlikely to happen between them. Europe, especially Scandinavia, became more peaceful after World War II. This has made Norway one of the safest places on Earth. Third, one of the most important events in its recent past. In 1969, a huge oil field was found in Norway's exclusive economic zone in the middle of the North Sea. This changed Norway's natural resource supply for good. It was called the Greater Ekofisk Area. After that, the government set up Statoil, an oil company. Later, it combined with Norsk Hydro to form Equinor. Equinor is owned by the state 2/3 of the way, but its name makes it clear what it's really for. Equi in Equinor means equal, and Nor signifies Norway. In equal Norway, that's what this company hopes to get from its sales. This business didn't start making money until the 1980s because it took so long to build up its cash. But since then, the GDP and GDP per head have grown a huge amount. They are now 366 billion USD and 68,000 USD per person, respectively. When most countries find oil, there is usually a civil war, unrest, or some other kind of political unrest to decide how to split the new natural riches among the people of the country. But because the resource mining was run by a state-owned business, the Norwegian government was able to keep the money it made and use it to create one of the world's largest welfare programs for its small population. By 1975, Norway's exports were higher than their imports. And in the late 1990s, they were able to pay off their national debt, which is something that almost no other first world country can do. It has the second best productivity number in all of Europe right now, just behind Ireland. About 35% of all the shares in the Oslo Stock Exchange are owned by the government. By using state-owned companies, oil was able to make the country one of the richest in the world. Norwegians are like people who win the lottery and then put their money to work to get even richer. No one needs to be told that Norway is very wealthy. The secret lies in its unique environment, which no other country or area can match. First, Norway's rough terrain and cold climate have kept the population low and restricted growth. This means that any earnings split among the country are much higher than if it had a large population. Second, their part of the world is one of the most peaceful in recent history. So Norway doesn't have to worry about a foreign power making the country unstable. Third, Norway has some of the best social systems in the world, thanks to the oil that was found in the North Sea. This has helped the country's GDP, happiness, and HDI all go through the roof. Norge was poor for a long time, but recent events and geography have made it rich. Norway is a good example of what to do if your country has a lot of natural riches. For similar content, don't forget to check out some of the other videos on your screen.